All right, so last week I had a run-in with this anti-theist on Twitter. And then I watched a little bit of the the anti-theist debate on modern day debate. And I'm going to try and tie them both together. But let's start with Amy. Okay, so Amy was in this debate on modern day debate. I think it was Thursday night. And then that Friday morning I had a run-in with this anti-theist on Twitter. So Amy, in her debate, does a variation on the everything but the kitchen sink approach to anti-theism. What is the everything but the kitchen sink approach to anti-theism? Religion is bad because God doesn't exist, because religion is based on superstition, because the Bible is full of hateful scriptures, because God commanded a genocide, because God endorses slavery in the Old Testament, because blah, 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 and ties all these things together in this big, complicated jumble, as if they're all relevant to each other. They aren't. Now, to be perfectly fair to the anti-theist, if you're an anti-theist listening, I'm going to be perfectly fair to you. Well, thank you, Craig. You are welcome. You see that as all part and parcel of the same thing. They aren't. They aren't all propositions that are all tied together and relevant to each other. If you're going to say I want to take a scientific approach to things, I want to think rationally and I want to think clearly, then you need to differentiate the propositions from each other, because they're only vaguely related. So, for example, the core of the debate, and this is why I'm saying, if you're a Christian listening to me, this is the winnable debate, slam dunk for Christianity, is the secular utility of religion. Now, that is a core proposition that can be totally ferreted out and differentiated from other propositions relevant to Christian theology. That's just a single proposition. Religion in general, Christianity in particular, has been profoundly useful for society. And overall, has all these benefits, and it is a net positive for society. Now that's undercutting anti-theism, period. And that's a single proposition. That's not Jesus, the evidence, because what Amy did, was she tied them all together. She brought up the resurrection in her opening statement. Christianity is true. Anti-theism, I hold to the anti-theist position because Christianity is predicated on superstition. There's not evidence that, she literally brought that up, there's not evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. Now that's the temptation if you're a Christian, you're in this debate. That's the one way that you can lose the slam dunk debate that favors the Christian, is they start bringing up other things, and then you feel tempted to start defending Christianity. Well, think you're doing yourself a favor, pick up your apologist hat, and go, well, there's tons of evidence for the resurrection. You've just changed the debate to one that does not favor you, to one that all the atheist needs to do is remain skeptical and be unconvinced. The debate that clearly favors you, which is a slam dunk for Christianity, okay, is the secular utility of religion. Now, if you're an anti-theist listening to this, if you care about what's true, now Amy, for example, says, I care about, in her opening statement, I care very much about the conclusions of science, and I care very much about the conclusions of sociology. Okay, it is science and sociology. It is the conclusions of those two enterprises that point to the secular utility of religion. You have your really, really intellectually sophisticated agnostic atheists nowadays, your Brett Weinsteins. And the conclusions they are coming to are inescapable. Why? Because the conclusions are based on the scientific data and the sociological observation. Again, the data. The conclusions are data-driven. They aren't, I feel it such. I feel it in my heart that Christianity is just good, Craig. They are backed up by the data and the facts. That's why it's a total slam dunk for the Christian. But you need to differentiate. So you need to pull apart the propositions, because they're different. They aren't all created equal, and they aren't all part and parcel of the same thing. Now, what has this got to do with the person who I talked to on Twitter? Okay, so another anti-theist shows up on Twitter and starts saying, I mean, some of the predicate for anti-theism is so astonishingly ignorant. I can't even fathom it. Now, I don't fault people for being ignorant. What I fault is people in the atheist community for being ignorant, because these same people say that they value so much, evidence-based conclusions, examination of the facts, knowledge-based. That's how they come to their conclusions. Okay, so start examining the facts. Again, the intellectually sophisticated agnostics and atheists are not just giving lip service to the idea that they care what science says, that they care what the sociological conclusions point to, that they care what the data seems to reveal. They're not just saying that. A lot of the other ones are. They're just saying that. I care about it, but I'm not going to explore it enough to know what's actually being said by the relevant science, by the relevant sociology. Do you understand what I'm saying? I didn't say it all that well. I get that. So, for example, this woman in this little Twitter feud I got into she started out talking to Laura Robinson, and she started saying things that at first glance I wasn't sure if they were completely ignorant. That's why I got engaged, because she said, it isn't the Bible that produced, religion didn't produce anything good in the society that we presently inhabit. It was the Enlightenment. That's where all of these values came from that we hold near and dear to our heart. So I asked her, because that was a really weird statement, and she seemed to be positing herself as kind of an egghead, so I was like, okay, maybe she knows something about this that I don't. Because according to me, and according to most people on the subject, I think what started was Tom Holland's Dominion. According to most people who are knowledgeable on the subject, okay, the present society that we inhabit, there are many values and beliefs that undergird our society as we currently live it, that are near and dear to the heart of the secular humanist as well as the practicing Christian. Now, as far as my understanding is, almost every single one of those sacred beliefs can be traced back to the Bible, to Christianity. Almost every single one of them. And I've argued this in other videos. For example, most secular humanists are universalists. They believe we're all part of the family of man. We're all the brotherhood of man, Craig. It's so beautiful. Yeah, it's so beautiful. Every human being is an individual with inalienable rights, and we're all part of this great brotherhood of man. Dude, that's so beautiful. Don't poke out that joint, man. Pass it over. Yeah, it's so beautiful, bro. Okay, that's a secular humanist point of view. That's totally traceable back to the Bible. That belief was not born in a vacuum. It was born out of the pages of the Scriptures, and is directly tethered to the Imago Dei, that every single solitary person is made in the image of God. Hence, all part of the brotherhood of man, all part of the family of man. Hence, everyone has inalienable rights. Now, I didn't know that this person was ignorant, because they were talking a big egghead game. So I thought maybe they had some new information. So I said, okay, what values in particular are you referring to that were born out of the Enlightenment that can be totally separated from Christianity, that had nothing to do with Christianity? Now, the only one that she mentioned is separation of church and state. And then when I started asking her the question, it was really interesting. She threatened to block me, first of all. I swear to God, she didn't answer me. Why? And then when she started answering me in ways that were totally astonishingly fake and ignorant, I started getting hip to the fact immediately that this person had no idea what they were talking about. Her first answer to me was see Voltaire, reference Voltaire. Well, I was like, Voltaire? What on earth has Voltaire got to do with anything? I mean, I'm not a Voltaire expert, but I have enough common education and common knowledge to understand who Voltaire was and what he represented. The only thing she seemed to know was that he was a figure from the Enlightenment. What he's got to do with these universal these values that were born out of the Enlightenment that can't be traced back to religion, I have no idea. And I said, okay, what's Voltaire got to do with anything? And I said to her, as far as my understanding of Voltaire is, he was an anti-clericalist, sure, and he was anti-church power, but he wasn't exactly an anti-Christian. He made a lot of statements condemning religion, and he was against certain aspects of religion because he thought it was a corrupting influence, but he wasn't against Christianity per se. So, okay, what from Voltaire? Then she switched the subject again. She brought up some who'd she bring up? I think it was James Madison. Some anti-religion book from James Madison, as if that's somehow relevant. This is the problem with anti-theists in general. A lot of them, they learn one or two things and think they know everything, think they are now educated on the subject, and they don't bother to learn. So she threatens to block me. Why? Because it was clear to me from what I was asking, it started to become clear to her that she had no idea what she was talking about. None. Zero idea what she was talking about. That her anti-religious tirades were just this, mythology, that she never really looked into the facts, never really examined. Most of the beliefs that she would tell you are near and dear to secular society, really important to the functioning of a healthy secular society. Most of those beliefs can be traced back to Christianity, including you can make a really strong case for the separation of church and state. It's been argued, and I tend to agree with this argument, that when Jesus says, whose face is on that coin? And they say, Caesar's. Give unto Caesar that which is Caesar. Render unto God that which is God's. That's the beginning of the idea that my kingdom is not of this world, and the spiritual things are my kingdom, which isn't of this world. And there's the world of the secular church, there's the world of me, church, and them, state. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. You can make a really strong argument that that's the beginning, that idea even alone, separation of church and state, is foundational in Christianity. It's not a slam dunk, but that's the only one that's not a slam dunk. Now, outside of that, what ideas or values were born out of the Enlightenment that can't be traced directly or indirectly back to Christianity? I don't know. That's why I asked. And I wasn't sure that she was going to have no answer, but she had no answer. Now, why that's an astonishingly ignorant statement is because the only person in the Enlightenment, Rousseau, that's it. That's the only one who had beliefs that were directly contradicting what the Bible actually teaches about life. He said that man was innately good, that people were born good, and everywhere they were in chains. Now that's a direct contradiction to what the Bible has to say about, people are intrinsically corrupt. That's it. As far as I know, every other Enlightenment figure you can mention just about, it was heavily influenced by Christianity. Kant, for example. You can make a really strong argument that all Kant was trying to do was trying to circle the square between, the challenges laid out by someone like Hume and traditional religion. Really hard pressed. Hume is about it. Hume and Rousseau, those are the only two who were in some senses opposed or different from the teachings of Christianity or the teachings of religion. Every other Enlightenment figure you could think of or name was heavily influenced by Christianity. To differentiate, to ferret out, these are the beliefs that they were talking about, that gave birth to the American Revolution and our system of government, that are different than Christianity, that came from a different source. So I thought she might have had something actually to say. She didn't. Why? Because she's totally ignorant. And she threatened to block me, so that she's a total coward. Totally ignorant, just running off her mouth. Doesn't know, never really read, never really thought about the subject. There may be an answer. I'm not saying that every single part of our secular society, the ones I mentioned, the rule of law can be traced back to the Bible. The intrinsic worth of a human being can be traced back to the Bible. The intrinsic value of every single human life, that can be traced directly back to the Bible. Huge chunks of what we hold near and dear as a secular society. The secular humanist says these are really important. Freedom of speech. Now that's an iffy one. That's the only one I can think that's kind of iffy, where you can't make a strong case that it emerged out of Christian worldview, Christian concepts of reality. I could probably make a case, but you could probably make a case against it. Do you see what I'm saying? Most of the anti-theists' arguments are predicated on ignorance. Ignorance alone. Ignorance that, when pressed, they'll threaten to block you rather than actually think about the subject, rather than investigate the subject. Most of the people that they cite as their intellectual heroes, they haven't even read. You know, most of them, with the sole exception of Hume, a lot of them have read some parts of Hume. That's about it. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who's well-versed in anybody other than Hume. So most of what they say is really, really important to their secular, even their secular worldview. First of all, they don't recognize how it has directly emerged out of Christianity. It's literally almost impossible in today's society, today's culture, to ferret out the ideas that can be directly traced back to Christianity. This culture that we presently inhabit emerged out of a culture known as Christendom. And by far the most influential book in this culture, by far nothing else was even close, was the Bible. So most of the values that anti-theists are, when they're not foaming at the mouth about how terrible religion is, most of the values that they say are really important, really deeply held beliefs, stuff that we should care about, their sacred beliefs, are directly inspired by religious thinking. That's the point. Directly inspired by. And, you know, why someone doesn't want to know that? Because they have an agenda. It's called motivated reasoning, and they decry it when Christians do it, but they do it just as much. And they don't really bother to learn. They just rather, emote. Basically, everything she complains about in a Christian, she does. I don't really want to know the subject. I just want to emote about it passionately and pretend that I'm right, even though I haven't investigated, Now, how does this tie into Amy? Because Amy, it's the same principle at work. Amy's opening argument said, we should value the conclusions of science, we should value the conclusions of sociology. There's a reason why the intellectually sophisticated atheists and agnostics are starting to come around to the conclusion that irrespective of whether you believe in God or not, religion has profound sociological utility. Why? Because it's an inescapable, unavoidable conclusion. And it undercuts the entire idea of anti-theism. I'm not saying that anti-theists aren't right about some aspects of religion can be toxic. Sure, almost nobody I know would disagree with that. But overall, religion is a net positive for society overall. And all of the studies, or huge chunks of the studies, undergird this. So how someone like Amy can walk around with a clear conscience saying we should all be thinking about, we shouldn't be thinking superstitiously, we should be looking to science and we should be looking to sociology. And science and sociology point to the very conclusion that the other guy was arguing, that religion is profoundly useful. That's the point. Somewhere along the way, reality's got to come through. There's got to be a reality check. You can't just give lip service to science and sociology. You have to actually read the conclusions of science and sociology and change your opinions to the facts. If you say my opinions are based on the facts, well, the facts clearly indicate the sociological utility of religion. And there's no escaping it. If there isn't a God, then it's even more conclusive. And why on earth has religion survived for 2,000 years? Because it's astonishingly useful. That's why. And that's what the facts, that's what the data indicates. Now, it's funny because she talked about superstition in her opening statement, and the other thing that she mentioned as a superstition was karma. Interesting little thing to note, because karma is also one of these beliefs. You don't have to be like a total rocket scientist. Karma is basically the belief in like Hindu cultures that, if you do good, good will result. If you do bad, bad things are going to happen to you. You don't have to be some sort of profoundly brilliant sociologist to understand how even that particular superstition, if that's a superstition, let's just say it's not true, but you can easily understand as a rationalist, as a secular humanist, as a person who predicates their knowledge on supposedly the facts of what science tells you. You can easily understand, you don't have to be super brilliant to understand how that particular superstitious belief, or not necessarily true belief, could have profoundly beneficial results for the society at large. If you've got a whole bunch of people in your culture thinking, if I do a bad thing, bad karma is going to happen. Not going to need as many police officers, are you? No. This is why she's never even bothered to understand metaphorical truths, never even bothered to look at what Brett Weinstein has to say on the subject. Karma is a perfect example of a metaphorical truth, something that's not necessarily true, but really, really useful for people to believe. Produces beneficial results, irrespective of whether it's true or not. So, I mean, if you're an anti-theist, really think, guys. There's no escaping this. If religion isn't true, it doesn't matter. The anti-theist claim is that it's toxic and destructive. It isn't. It's more often than not profoundly beneficial. And that, if you start studying the facts, you'll come to that conclusion almost unavoidably, almost inescapably. Yeah, there are toxic aspects of Christianity, sure. As practiced by some. Not as practiced by I, Craig Reed, but practiced by some of these guys. Some of these other people. Those toxic aspects need not be there. But that's not the point of the debate. The point of the debate is the anti-theist is claiming that those toxic aspects far outweigh the benefits. And that's just patently false. Provably false, knowably false. The fact that you don't know it is inexcusable. Why? Because most of what you say is you predicate your beliefs on the facts. And knowledge of the facts, study of the facts, predicate your belief on what science and sociology indicate. Well, that's what science and sociology indicate. So where on earth are you? Inexcusable. Inexcusable. Why? Because intellectual integrity demands that you yield to the facts. Why? Because that's what you say you predicate your beliefs on. So, something's got to give. Somewhere along the way, you're going to have to say, either I don't care what the facts say, I'm a faith-based person just like most of the Christians that I totally, object to, or you're going to have to say, wow, religion really is useful. One or the other. You can't do both. You can't do both. This is why I've been saying this secular utility of religion argument is a slam dunk for Christianity. Slam dunk. Why? Because the facts back it up. Period. And eventually the atheist, the anti-theist is going to have to yield to the facts or admit that they don't care what the facts say. They just care about faith. One or the other. Can't have both ways. Can't keep living. That's real cognitive dissonance. That's a real self-contradictory position. Either yield to the data, yield to the analysis, yield to what the sociology and the science clearly indicates, or admit that you don't care what the facts say. You just gotta have a faith. I just gotta have faith, the faith. Religion, it's really bad. That's your faith-based conclusion. That religion's really bad, Craig. I don't care what the facts say. It sucks. Why? I just know it sucks. I feel it in my heart. See what I'm saying? It's just awful. Ew, they go to church and they pray. Ew, ew, ew. It's all terrible. Ew. It's all superstitious mumbo jumbo and it's so destructive. Why is it so destructive? I don't care what the facts say, Craig. I feel it in my heart that it's destructive. See? Do you see the problem? Do you see the contradiction? Do you get it? Doesn't matter. Won't be the first video made on the subject. It's just time to face the music, guys. If you are the anti-theist, it's time to either examine the facts or admit that you don't care what the facts say. One or the other. One or the other. There you have it, kids. That's all for now. Mass is ended. Go in peace. Amen.